Welcome to class two, or at least the lecture portion of class two. This is just going to finish off a little bit of the historical background and so on that I wasn't able to get to on Wednesday. And yeah, next week we start in earnest in our readings and delving really into the nuts and bolts of mythology. As today's lecture, we're going to do some historical background, a little bit of geography, some defining of terms and chronology. And if you have any questions, if I've been confusing on anything, feel free to ask them and I'll do my best to not be confusing. This is a Google Map image of, you'll often hear classicists or me specifically say the Mediterranean world or the greater Mediterranean world. Just in case, I make absolutely no judgments here. The Mediterranean is the big body of water in the middle, and it's kind of the highway, the superhighway of the ancient world. There's a whole bunch of other seas connected to the Mediterranean, and you will learn these over time if you continue in classics: the Aegean, the Black Sea, the Adriatic, and so on. But it's okay to just kind of think of the whole thing right now. Just all of this is the Mediterranean. And if we zoom in a little bit, this on the left is Greece, and on the right is Anatolia. This is the modern countries, Greece and Turkey. You also may hear Anatolia on the right. You may hear that referred to as Asia Minor, and a whole bunch of other names. It gets renamed over and over and over again. So this is just a kind of a general geographic placement for you. And in case you're wondering, that sea in the middle, so the water that is in between Greece and Anatolia, that is the Aegean. And the Aegean is really, really important to Greeks. It's very important in how they see their world, especially in in classical Greece, or they are an Aegean worldview, an Aegean power. I'm just gonna, this is from your textbook. It's got some place names. You will see that the majority of these place names are in the south. There's a whole bunch of names clustered around the bottom. I don't think my cursor actually shows up on there, does it? All the place names are clustered at the bottom of Greece, and then there's these vast stretches, Aetolia, Thessaly, Macedonia. That's because, especially in the earliest centuries, most of ancient Greece is actually confined to a region called Attica, which is where Athens is, and then the Peloponnese, which is the peninsula, and that's where Sparta is. The peninsula that looks kind of like a hand underneath. And then there's also some Greek settlement across the Aegean in Anatolia, these cities on the western borders of Anatolia. So this is just to give you an idea of where Greeks are in terms of when we go through these myths, place names will feature over and over and over. You will be confused. That's okay. We all are for a long time. It takes time to learn these terms, to learn these regions. Being confused is just kind of par for the course. It's really okay. But the place names will come up over and over in our sources, and you will learn which ones that particular author thinks is close by and local, and which ones that author thinks are actually foreign. So they will talk about foreign Phrygia, which is just over here in the northern part of Anatolia. That's not very far, especially if you look at our worldview today. I mean, that's probably, if you were to drive straight like a prairie drive, that's probably an 8-hour drive. So that's Fort Mac. Okay, so who were the Greeks as a people? This will delve into a little bit of linguistic terminology here. Indo-European is a language family. Around the world, there are a number of primary language families, and Indo-European is one of them. And Greek belongs to that language family. You don't have to learn linguistics for this course. This is just to give you an idea of when people are related to each other, especially when I start talking about Italy. Greek belongs to the Hellenic languages, and then Macedonian is a very closely related. It's always debated whether ancient Macedonian is a dialect of Greek or a divergent language. Doesn't really matter for the purposes, especially for the purposes of this course. But just to let you know that there are related peoples next to each other that can talk back and forth, but they don't always necessarily use the same words for the same things all the time. Chronologically, the first period that we've got any kind of material is the Bronze Age, and then the dates are there. Again, I'm not a huge stickler on dates. You just have to know that the Bronze Age comes first in the timing that we're talking about, and roughly when it began and roughly when it ended. During the Bronze Age, Greece starts off with very, very small settlements. Not a whole lot going on in terms of nothing in terms of cities, and not a whole lot in terms of large scale settlements. And then by the end of it, there are massive settlements. There are kingdoms and fortifications. During the Bronze Age, writing is first introduced, but this is a writing system that many of us are, if we are familiar with it, we know the name, and that's about it. That's Linear B. This is a writing system that is a modified version of Linear A, which we're not going to talk about that really, but basically it comes into Greece. Greeks did not invent writing, and they did not invent their own writing system whole cloth. It was brought in and adapted. There are a few sources in Linear B, and as far as I know, there are no named authors. We don't have an author of Linear B that we can point to and say, the great poetry of so-and-so. There are, wonderfully, in your textbook, in the appendices, there are some Linear B sources that talk about gods and goddesses. Usually it's just one line, but I've got a few things in there in the presentation about that. This is possibly the most famous image from Bronze Age Greece. This is so-called the face of Agamemnon. The culture of Bronze Age Greece, particularly the later Bronze Age, is called Mycenaean. And this is a death mask of a Mycenaean leader that, when this material was excavated, got named Agamemnon, who's a famously king of Mycenae, or a king in the Iliad. This is a sample of some Linear B writing from your textbook. This is from the appendices. And it just says here, tablet fragment 1226, recording the offering of sage-scented oil to the gods. You can see in the middle there, that's reconstruction. The only original pieces are on the ends. But because writing is formulaic and inscriptions are repetitive, we have ways of reconstructing this material to find out or discern what these things say. Jumping ahead, after the Bronze Age, we have what's called the Dark Ages or the Bronze Age collapse. I really hate terms like Dark Ages, but it's used everywhere, and so I kind of have to repeat it. It's called Dark Ages because there's a loss of writing. Linear B disappears. And for a very long time, scholarship basically says, since it's a dark age, that just means that people are rolling around in mud doing nothing. It's obviously boring and stupid, but that's wrong, and I don't like it. But there is a much smaller scale of settlements. Moving forward into the Archaic period, we get a new writing system. This is the Greek alphabet as we know it today, or at least the origins of it. And this gets imported from Phoenicia, which is a city, or a series of settlements on the Eastern Mediterranean in modern-day Lebanon. We have several known authors from this time period, Homer, Hesiod, and Sappho. These are ones that we will go over next week. And this is the origin of the city-state, or the polis. This is when it first begins in the Archaic period. And you also get colonies start spreading around the Aegean and also across the Mediterranean. So Greeks start branching out from Greece. We are almost out of time. Wow, we don't have a lot of time here. In classical Greece, we have, this is the next time period, we have many, many, many authors. There's a whole bunch of wars, both Greeks against foreigners, the Persian Wars and so on, but Greeks against other Greeks. Authors write about this. Often they invoke some mythological connections, and there's a further expansion of the Greek world. After the classical period, we get the character of Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great basically brings the classical period to the end, or him and his dad. All of mainland Greece is conquered under one kingdom for the first time. And Greek leaders take control over not just the entire Eastern Mediterranean, but far afield into Persia, and even make inroads into India. And what this means is that there's so many more authors writing in Greek. And so the Greek world vastly expands. And because the Greek world vastly expands, you get a reinterpretation and a recontextualization of the myths that had existed for a much smaller scale civilization. And then last we have Roman Greece. The time periods here are a little fuzzy, but Rome as a growing power comes into Greece and starts dismantling these Hellenistic kingdoms, the Hellenistic powers. There's too many authors to list here, but effectively Greeks don't go away. They get conquered by Romans, but they still exist in Greece and throughout the entire Eastern Mediterranean. But it changes. It's now no longer Greeks under Greeks. It's Greeks under Romans. That is, the different end dates here just basically mean different time periods. 476 is when the Western Roman Empire falls. 641 is when the Byzantine Emperor Heraclius dies, and 1453 is just when the entire Byzantine Empire falls apart. You do not need to memorize these dates. This is just to give you an idea that there is some cultural continuity over centuries. And we're out of time, so I can't even tell you about the Romans or classics. So we'll pick this up on Wednesday. Monday is a holiday, so we do not have class on Monday. And your readings will be posted. Enjoy.